You've probably been blocked, and it's probably followed up with the narrative of I've had to block her or I've had to block him. And all of a sudden, they gain complete control of the narrative. And I'm going to just start off by saying this, that a lot of people will avoid people if they conjure up emotions they can't deal with. Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Coming Up for Air with myself, Lou. Sorry, I was just making sure that my microphone was working. Welcome to my Friday. Welcome back. I have new hair. Now, I don't know whether you'll be able to tell that I have new hair. I think you can. I've gone shorter. This is the shortest my hair's been for a very long time. I've gone shorter and I've had my blonde toned down. Now, if you have listened to all of my episodes, you will know that I have spoken about my hair being my identity crisis when I went through my breakup. However, it stuck around because I really liked it. I really, really liked my blonde. It was like the new version of me, and I'd never dyed my hair before pre-breakup. So it's something new that I wanted to try. And I remember my best friend's my hairdresser, and I remember her first doing it and being like, oh, I don't know whether I like that. And then I just got progressively blonder and blonder and blonder. And then we had to scale it back a bit because my hair was in such bad condition because of the bleach. And I just find that no matter what you do, if you've bleached your hair, you know it takes so long to be able to get it back into good condition. Now, my hair used to be 10 times the thickness that it actually is now. And I think that's why I've never gone short, because it always looked a bit weird because I had all this hair and it was really blunt cut. But now it's a lot thinner because the bleach. I quite like it this length, but what I've done, just for the girlies that are interested, I've grown my roots out to a point. So I only really had my front bits done, to be fair. I think my blonde, you can kind of see it if you're watching, is here. So I grew my blonde out so I had a good amount of roots. And then my hairdresser toned down my blonde, and it makes me look more of a brunette because I am naturally a brunette. And when I look back at photos of me when I had just gone through my breakup or whilst I was in a relationship, my hair is so thick and long, and it's just so different to what it is now. And so I'm going to try and get on a journey of getting my hair into a healthier condition, just so I know that it's not going to fall out when I'm older, for one. And also, if I want to bleach it again in the future, then I can. And it's kind of like looking after your skin and your teeth, and there's only so much that you can put your hair, the stress that you can put your hair under before it goes, I've had enough, stop bleaching it. My hairdresser is my best friend, so she's quite brutal about it. She'll say, your hair's going to fall out. Your hair's in really bad condition. She chopped off as much as I wanted, but we could have probably gone shorter. I think she probably would have wanted to go shorter, but it already feels a lot more healthier. So we're on to a good thing. Anyway, I can't believe how busy my weekend was. I had a Halloween party, a wedding, a birthday party, a fireworks display. And so I gave myself Monday off work. I gave myself Monday off to decompose and decompress, and I basically just loitered around. I slept. I was so hungover. I had 2 solid days of drinking. I actually don't know how I got through my best friend's wedding. People could call me irresponsible. I just say I did it for the plot, going out. I got home at a decent time. I got home at 12:30 on Friday, but I was drunk. And then I got up, I didn't have to be at the venue until 3:00 on Saturday, so I gave myself ample amounts of time to get down to Luton, but it was a struggle. And she said to me, do not take it one step too far, because she knows what I'm like, and I think I may have taken it one step too far. But I partied all night, and I drank all night. There was not one moment in that whole entire wedding where I didn't have a drink in my hand. So
pat myself on the back for that. But sometimes I do sit, like I sat at the end of my bed and I had the shakes a little bit, the alcohol shakes, and I was like, why? Why do you do this? Why do you always take it one step too far? Why can't you just, say, I'm not drinking tonight? But it was Halloween. It was Halloween. It was just how it fell. I didn't realize it felt like that. I was very excited for Halloween. It's mine and my best friend's favorite holiday because it's like Halloween, bonfire night, birthday, Christmas. So I was very excited, and it just so happened that my best friend just slotted her UK wedding in just after Halloween, which, yeah, it was just, it was one of them. Anyway, I survived. And then I got up in the morning, I had to hit the bloody road again because it was my sister's birthday. And then I went to a fireworks display. Honestly, crazy, manic. When is my life not manic? When do we not love being crackers? Anyway, today I'm going to talk about being blocked. Now, I've never done a full hours episode on being blocked. I've done an episode on my Patreon about being blocked, but it was only like a 20-minute sort of episode. So I'm going to do a full episode about being blocked and how to deal with it. Now, I can talk from experience because I was blocked. I have blocked other people. I've done the blocking, I've been blocked. And so I'm going to come at it from like 3 ways. I'm going to do initially what it feels like when you are going through your breakup, because it is rough. I'm going to talk about being blocked by friends, family, and new partners, friends, because I've gone through that as well. And then I'm going to talk about how it feels now, because in my story, I did the blocking and then was blocked. So I'm going to talk about it from my point of view. I'm going to add in some tips that my therapist gave me. I'm going to talk to you about it from a mindset perspective. And I'm basically going to send you away armed with tips, tricks, mindset shifts on how to deal with being blocked, because it's not nice. I have a block list on Instagram on my running account page of about 3,500 people. I block people when I don't want them to see my content, whether they've sent me hate, whether it's just spam accounts. But like on my personal account, I haven't got that many accounts blocked, but I have blocked a few people just for my own peace and my own sanity. So yeah, it's hard. It's a rough topic to have to sit down and think about. And I feel sorry for people who are like go through a breakup and they are just blocked with no communication. That wasn't the case for me. There was a lot of communication before I did the blocking and then was blocked. So I'm going to talk to you about basically being blocked, how to handle it, and hopefully, like I said, at the end of this episode, you will feel a little bit better. Not a little bit better, but you will feel like you can cope with it a little bit better, having gone away armed with the tips and tricks that I'm going to send you away with. So, like I said, it's a rough topic to talk about, and I will try and share my own experiences as much as I possibly can without saying too much. Because again, it is hard to talk about it, and people have their own reasons for blocking people, and I'm going to try and make you see from a point of view that it isn't your fault why you're being blocked. It carries such a heavy connotation. It's like, if you are blocked, you must have been trouble, and like you must have been like obsessive, you must have been crazy, you must have been this, you must have been that. It's the complete opposite. It doesn't even lie with you. It lies with them, the person that's done the blocking. Unless you have blocked from a point of peace, which in my story, I have the messages prior to being blocked to back up the fact that we weren't protecting anyone's peace at all. For me, it was from a peace perspective, and then I did unblock. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you all about that. So without further ado, guys, let's get into it. So I'm going to talk to you guys about my story, and then I'm going to talk to you about how to cope with being blocked, because being blocked is one of those things where it's one or the other. It can mean one thing or the other. So there are a number of different reasons why people block you. And I remember going into my therapy session around the time that my number had been blocked and being like, I just don't understand. And I found it really difficult to understand because I had done so much work on myself that I didn't feel the need to block my ex anymore. And that I could just have the number there and I could just have, you know, like the phone call if he ever needed to pick up the phone. I could, you know, see them on social media. And I've gone from like having everything to having nothing. So like I never blocked my ex. I had to block people around him, and I'll go into that, but I never blocked my ex. It was really weird. And even now I'm only blocked on Instagram and my phone number. I'm not blocked on Facebook, but who knows? This episode could get back to him and I could be like, cut off. You just don't know. But I remember approaching my therapist about this and being like, okay, I've been blocked. And when I say I've been blocked, I mean, I'm talking in respect to I went to my therapist when my number had been blocked, not when my Instagram had been blocked. And she said that there was 3 reasons why people block people. The first one's avoidance, the second one is emotional protection, and the third one is narrative control. And it is very much from a control perspective. And she said to me, how come you've blocked people in the past? So my story goes is that I unfollowed and deleted my ex off of social media. And we kept each other's numbers because we worked for each other. And I ended up having to block certain people from his new life because I was getting like liked, unliked, followed, unfollowed. I was getting tormented. And it's funny because when I talk to people about it, they're like, what? We never knew that. And I'm like, well, no, you're not going to know that, are you? Because it's something that I don't think my ex would be like, oh yeah, so-and-so did this to her, so-and-so did that to her. People are quite shocked that this happened. And I went through a heavy, heavy time and suffered with PTSD, which meant my memory went a little bit west. Around 2023, I went to a therapy session before and said, I don't remember that. And my therapist was like, pardon? And I was like, I don't remember that session. And she was like, right. So she got out her therapy notes and then we watched a talk video that I had done. And still to this day now, it gives me like shivers and it makes me go cold inside because I'm like, how does your brain do that? Like, how does your brain erase that? I remember that therapy session now, but I didn't. And it absolutely terrified me, like to my core, that I couldn't remember this session. I couldn't remember certain things. And my memory was like, it just took a massive hit. And so the point of me telling you this is that I have a whole folder of screenshots. And people will call me the crazy ex-girlfriend. No, I do it for my own mental well-being because sometimes, obviously, what I've chosen to do, sit and make a podcast and help people through their breakups, it does conjure up questions. If people hear clips or, you know, people say, oh yeah, like Lou spoke about that this week, I'm able to back up a lot of the stuff I say. I only ever talk about stuff that I can back up. I never talk about stuff that were private conversations between me and my ex. And I always say to people, you know, there's only 2 people that went through the breakup, 2 people that were in the house whilst, you know, arguments were happening, conversations were happening, chats were happening. There were only 2 people on, you know, your own WhatsApp messages that were getting the screenshots and stuff. So I am very careful about what I talk about on here. It might sound like I am like, I open up about everything, but if you've got me on Patreon, you know that I am very, very honest at the fact that I probably only open up about just over half my breakup. There are things that I don't talk about because if anybody came for me, I've not got evidence to talk about it. Some of the stuff's really personal, and so I don't talk about it. So I'm very careful about what I speak about on here. This isn't just like a free-for-all that I go through my entire breakup on. There are certain things that I do miss out. And when I was talking to my therapist about being blocked, she said to me, have you ever blocked anybody? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, what was the purpose? And I was like, well, I just didn't want them knowing about me anymore. And I was like, because we fell out, or I just, yeah. And she was like, so recently, who have you blocked? And I was like, half of Instagram. I have to block people. I get a lot of abuse. I don't talk about it, and I'm not one of those creators that draws attention to it on my Instagram. I would never, well, I have done in the past. I have screenshotted certain things and put them out there, but only because like they are funny, but like male hating females. I have screenshotted before, but like I very, very, very rarely talk about the amount of abuse that I get on my pages. I probably get about 20 to 50 hateful comments a week that I just delete. And I don't ever think and deep it, because I've chosen to be vulnerable online. I've chosen to put certain videos online, so only I can deal with it. It's not anybody else's problem. The fact that those people feel like they need to come for me is also quite embarrassing, because a lot of them, and I will do this sometimes, I go on Facebook and LinkedIn and stuff, and I see what they do as a profession. I see what they do if they've got children, if they've got girls. And sometimes I have been known to screenshot certain photos and send them back to them and be like, I bet your daughters are really proud of you, or I bet your mum's really proud of you. So I just deal with it in my own way, and sometimes I send them to my sisters and we devise messages back. A lot of them just get blocked. And my therapist said, you are blocking for emotional protection, because you know that that is going to emotionally affect you and you don't want to deal with that sort of stuff. And I'm like, well, yeah, no, I don't. It's not that I can't deal with it. I just don't want to deal with it. So yeah, I have blocked people in the past because they have hurt me, or I know that they're going to hurt me, and I've protected myself. So that is, and I wanted to get this one out of the way first, because if you have blocked your ex because you can't physically see what they're doing, I have been there. I have deleted them off of Instagram, and luckily for me, my ex's account was private, so I didn't see anything from then. But if it was open, I probably would have to have rethought, do I need to block them just for the time being, where I don't feel strong enough not to stalk them. However, we're not talking about that. We're talking about being blocked. And so if you know that, like, you're listening to this and your ex and you maybe haven't ended on bad terms and you're blocked, and you know that it's because, you know, they might be struggling with you, what you're doing, or, you know, who you're spending time with and stuff, and they think, oh, do you know what, it's not nice for them to see who I'm spending time with, then it probably has come from like an emotional protection point of view. However, I know that 99% of the time, that's probably not the case. You've probably been blocked, and it's probably followed up with the narrative of, I've had to block her, or I've had to block him. And all of a sudden, they gain complete control of the narrative. And I'm going to just start off by saying this, that a lot of people will avoid people if they conjure up emotions they can't deal with. And so the first one that my therapist said, it's avoidance. It is, because seeing you and seeing what you're doing, or I don't know, if you posted a photograph of something of your family, they do not want to face the guilt or the regret or the discomfort that you might conjure up. Now, I always say, two sides to every story. I don't know whether my ex has walked into a therapy room, but there were lots of things that my ex didn't do, which I asked him to do, like go and talk to a therapist about how you're feeling. And they will just bury and bury and bury and bury and bury. And seeing you is like, oh, do you remember when I walked out on that girl and like totally flipped her life 360 and kind of just avoided the whole thing? That's what you're going to do to them. That's what I do to my ex. When he sees me, it's a reminder of how he dealt with things, how he could have probably dealt with them better, and all the guilt that he carried. He left me because he was guilty about certain things that he had done. Yes, he probably tells people he left me because he didn't want to get married, because I know that narrative flies around. But the reason why he left me, and the reason why he told me he left me, was because he didn't deserve me, because of the things that he had done. And so if you have had the same narrative spoken to you, that means that you conjure up emotions that they don't want to deal with. They don't want to see you because they know that they hurt you. And to be quite honest, when I think about my ex, I think about his face with the last time that I saw him, which was, I think it was at the races. I can't remember. And he just looked guilty. And they must think the last time that they saw you, I mean, I was absolutely probably beside myself, crying my eyes out, apart from at the races. Yeah, like that, they're reminded and probably pulled back to a time in their life that they have worked so hard to bury. And then they see you on social media. It's all about avoidance with them. It's all about avoidance with some people. And so if someone goes to blocking straight away, it's not maturity, regardless of whether they're stood in their friendship group saying, oh, I've had to block her or I've had to block him. No, it's avoidance dressed up as strength. They are avoiding having to actually deal with the emotions. And I don't mean sitting and listening to you tell them repeatedly what they have done, because again, you will know that I did that a lot in my breakup. I used to sit there and be like, you did this, you did that. They know exactly what they are doing. They knew exactly what they were doing and they still did it anyway. So why are you concerning with yourself with if they're stood there saying, oh, I've had to block her? No, they're avoiding something. It's not mature at all. And people that aren't secure do not need to block to move forward, because moving forward is in here. Actually moving forward is actually within your mindset. Sorry, I've just remembered, people are going to be listening to this. I put it to my head. Moving forward begins with your mindset. It begins with your brain. It begins there. Moving forward isn't jumping into a new relationship and isn't blocking your ex. That's not moving forward. Moving forward is stripping yourself back and thinking, hold on a second, how can I be better? How can I, heal from this? And I'm not telling everybody to check into therapy, but my way of moving forward was to sit in a therapy room and have some really, really tough conversations. And I did have therapy for my abandonment and for my trust and relationship, like counseling. I had all of that. But I now, and less obviously because my therapist is retired, but my therapy now is about me as a person and how I feel. And a lot of the time, I don't even bring feelings up about my ex, about my trauma. I have therapy to make sure that I am the best version of myself. And I have therapy to be able to know when I need to put my hands up and say, hey, I've done something wrong, or I actually don't feel comfortable doing this, or I think that was a bit out of line. I have become so much more self-aware through going through therapy. And I think people think that I just sit here and say I'm still in therapy from going, with my ex. I'm not. I go to therapy because I come out and I think, God, I could have really done that better, or I can really better myself by approaching the situation in a different way. Moving forward and healing is that. Moving forward and being like, ugh, I've had to block her. That's not moving forward. That's avoidance. They are avoiding the fact that your face conjures up emotions that they know that they have buried and haven't dealt with, and probably should have done, and probably shouldn't have jumped into a new relationship. They probably should have sat with themselves and thought, I'm the problem here. I'm the one that's had to walk away because I've done something wrong and I carry loads of guilt. So I'm probably the one that should probably go and get help. But it doesn't always happen like that, because people aren't as self-aware as you think, which is a shame, because a lot of people would have caused less stress and less harm on people if they actually did the inner work, looked at themselves and thought, I could be the problem here. I'm probably going to go and get help. Going to therapy isn't weak. Going to therapy and sitting in a therapy room and being like, I messed up, please help me. I'd have more respect over somebody that did my friend wrong. And then if my friend said to me, my ex did X, Y, and Z to me, but he's gone to therapy, I'd be like, good, he needs it. A lot of people don't do that, because a lot of people can't sit and be uncomfortable and be emotional and be comfortably emotional and comfortably uncomfortable, you know? And I would say that I'm an emotional person, but there have been times where I've stormed out that therapy room and said, I'm not talking to you. And my therapist has gone, okay. And I'm gone, I'm not having these conversations. And she's gone, okay, let's not have a therapy session today. It's hard. Therapy is one of the hardest things that I've ever done. And I will say that again and again and again. It is not for the faint-hearted. You really have to go to war with yourself. In a good way. In a controlled environment, you go to war with yourself. But my God, the battles like that you have in a therapy room are horrible. And so, yes, certain people I think should have gone to therapy. However, you can't force somebody that doesn't see wrong in their actions. And a lot of the time when people leave relationships, they do it because, well, I didn't love them. I fell out of love. I didn't want to get married. I didn't want to do this. But then they forget all the stuff that they dragged that person through in order to make those conclusions. And that has sat with me a lot. And sorry, I know I've gone off on a tangent, but like that has sat with me a lot recently, where I'm like, you know, the narrative of my breakup sometimes changes every time I talk to somebody new. I'm like, you've heard what story? Fine. I don't care. I don't correct the narrative anymore. The people that know the truth, and they're the people that mean the most to me. But the narrative changes sometimes, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. Believe that type of narrative. That is totally cool with me. And it's like those people, like I said, the people that matter and the people that know what had happened, because they're the people that came round and picked me up off the floor, or they're the people that have been there when I found something out, or they've been there, or they've seen the screenshots. And you don't have to prove yourself to anybody else, like, at all. And so just remember that, firstly, if you are blocked and you know that things have been unresolved, or like you didn't get closure from a situation, the entire whole reason why you have been blocked is because they cannot cope, and they can't cope with what they've done. It has absolutely nothing to do with you. And if you think, oh my God, this means that I'm toxic, this means that people are going to think I'm the problem, the people that think you're the problem are not the people that you need in your life. And I read something really interesting once, and it said, if people hear your story and then hear another story and they choose to believe the other story, they have already made their mind up about what person they perceive you to be. And it's so true, because there are versions of my breakup story that are wild. And I'm like, okay, fine. Again, I just accept it and sometimes say, you know, well, if that's the story you want to believe. And this is what I tell people when they come to me about mutual friends. And it's like, well, they believe my ex's story. Okay. And so when you are blocked, please, I know it's hard, because I've been in the situation where someone has actually offered me their phone and gone, do you want to have a look at his profile? And I've gone, yes. I got 4 pictures down and it was a shrine to his new girlfriend. And I thought, no, I don't want to do this anymore. Get away. So you're only going to hurt yourself if you do that, for one. And they might need distance to protect their version of the story. You need distance to protect your healing. There is a huge difference. So just remember that that is your closure. You are trying to get distance. Not only are you strong enough so you didn't have to block them, your boundaries and your strength shine through because you don't have to block them. Number 2, you also do not need to block them in order to protect a version of your story or anything like that. You need distance, not blocking. You need distance to heal. And you've recognized that. And so you've not done the blocking. You've just unfortunately been blocked, which is so annoying, because then you look like the problem. And hopefully by now, 30 minutes into this episode, you realise that you are actually not the problem. They are. Now, I'm just going to digress. Obviously, I've spoken about avoidance. I've spoken about protecting emotionally. And like I said, I've just touched on the emotional protection, because I know a lot of people are here where they have had quite awful breakups. So I know that sometimes like certain things like that probably aren't relevant. So I did touch on the emotional protection part. And then I'm going to talk about changing the narrative of the story and gaining control and how you can overcome that. But I just wanted to sidestep a little bit because in my story, this didn't happen. So I wasn't blocked because of my ex's new partner. However, I know that this is really common. And I know that like exes may have turned around to you and been like, my new girlfriend's made me block you, or my new boyfriend's made me block you. And I just wanted to touch on that because that is irritating, because somebody new has come in and been able to control a situation that has absolutely nothing to do with them. And I think a lot of this comes a lot from people's insecurities, for definite. I think as well, if you're listening to this and you know that your ex got into a rebound relationship, or a relationship that was really soon after you had split up, you can 100% guarantee the reason why they have asked for your ex-partner to block you is because of insecurities. Now, again, how do you deal with this? You have to really take yourself out of the situation. That sounds like a strange thing to say, but retaliating and knowing that if you know for definite you have been blocked because of your ex's new partner, do not retaliate, because again, you have to take yourself out of the situation and think, number one, do not compare your relationship to their relationship. And I always think this because my relationship was built off the ground something, you know, we both weren't in relationships, we were both single, we were both really young. Recently I've realized that I don't want a relationship that has been built off the back of somebody going through a breakup and not being able to be by themselves. So if you are in the position where your ex has got into a relationship really quickly, and then as a result you've been blocked, just know that number one, their relationship is not built on trust and never will be, because the way that they got together, even if nothing happened, you cannot trust a person that is fresh out of a relationship to not have a wandering eye because, you know, they've not spent enough time single, not to, you know, still have feelings for their ex. I would absolutely hate it. And this made me think the other day because my sister bumped into her ex-boyfriend on an aeroplane to Australia with her, I think my brother-in-law and my nephew at the time. I don't know. Actually, no. My nephew wasn't born. But she bumped into him on an aeroplane. You could not make this shit up, honestly. They bumped into each other on an aeroplane. They had a conversation and sat back down, and my sister said to my brother-in-law, I've just seen so-and-so. And he went, all right, that's weird. She was like, yeah, isn't it? No stress. Because my brother-in-law knew that, you know, my sister had been traveling by herself for 2.5 years. You know, she was comfortable on her own. There was no any form of like doubt that, you know, my sister was with her ex-boyfriend for 8 or 9 years, that there was going to ever be anything where he'd be like, oh, has that conjured up emotion? Has that made you feel a bit weird? And so you need to think of it as if you were to bump into your ex on an aeroplane and sit back down, and they were to sit back down with their new partner, would their new partner be thinking, oh my God, how's that made you? Oh my God, do you feel weird about that? Because they know in the back of their mind that their relationship was not built on solid foundations. It was built on sketchy foundations where if they were to bump into their ex, would they then be sitting for the entirety of that flight thinking, oh my God, are they thinking about them? Oh my God, what are they thinking? Oh my God, do they want to go back and speak to them? Let me tell you, they 100% are. So the fact that you have been blocked is, again, nothing to do with you, apart from if you are liking, unliking, blocking, unblocking, like following, unfollowing. If you're tormenting them or sending them abuse, then fair. They're probably going to block you. But if you are not doing any of that, like I didn't do any of that, and they have blocked you, it's on their own insecurities, 1000%. It's got nothing to do with you. And it is hard because, like I said, they're getting involved in your breakup, which had nothing to do with them. They are not even allowed an opinion on it, regardless. I always think this, like, regardless of whether it was good or a bad breakup, if it was tough or, you know, if you did something wrong, no one should have an opinion on your breakup because it has absolutely nothing to do with them. And I also think that if you have found out that your ex has said, you know, I also think that if you found out through your ex, maybe that their new partner has said, oh, I've got to block you. Oh, you know, you just think like, oh, do they like the attention? Are they loving this sort of like, oh, I'm being fought over? Again, like, don't get dragged into their games. Like, I always say to people, then they message me, I'm like, you are stronger than this. This is not your energy. This is not your energy. You aren't working on energy that is like getting pulled into people's drama. You are working on the energy of the fact that you are confident in your healing. You are confident in knowing that you are going to come out this probably a stronger person. You are confident in knowing that the universe was protecting you from something and someone that probably didn't have a space in your life. You just couldn't see it. That's the energy that you want to be, you know, projecting. You don't want to be projecting this energy where you're messaging her or messaging him saying like, what the hell? Like, why have I been blocked? Like, this has got nothing to do with you. Do not create more drama in your life. And also, just as an end point on this sort of segment, like I said, this wasn't the case for me, but they want a reaction out of you. The new girlfriend wants a reaction out of you, or the new boyfriend wants a reaction out of you. I have a TikTok that got, I think it was like 300,000 views, and it was like, I'm not the ex you want to stalk. The reason why I'm not the ex you want to stalk, because one, I have all of this, and I understand that it's not great, like, to be the new girlfriend of the ex that decided to start a podcast and a whole online presence around her breakup. It's not ideal. But why would you want to know how much your partner ruined somebody as a person? Why would you want to be reminded of that? You know, sometimes I think like, okay, yeah, block them if it is reminding you and having to make you sit with the feelings of, oh, I'm actually with somebody that's capable of doing something like that. That's not a nice place to sit. Why would they want to remind themselves of that? This is what I mean. Take a step back, exclude yourself from the situation, because you don't have to be a part of that. All those problems and all those trust issues and all those doubts and all those, you know, horrible thoughts of, oh my God, we're capable of doing this, or he's capable of doing this, or I'm capable of doing this. That is not your problem. You are not capable of doing it. You know the energy that you give out. You know the energy that you attract. So just make sure that you are really, really pinning down and homing in on you in this situation, not them. Like, let them do whatever they want. Like Mel Robbins, let them. The let them theory. Let them. Let them try and create their own narrative as to why you've had to be blocked, when you know there was no reason to. And like I said at the start of this episode, I blocked certain people in his new life because I didn't want them seeing stuff. They weren't very nice. They weren't very nice people. And I also know they had a part to play in my breakup. My ex confided in a lot of people that I didn't know through work that were women. I don't want them looking at my stuff. So, you know, I was never blocked, and that was never my narrative. I was never blocked because of the new girlfriend. But I do know that it is something that comes up and crops up in my DMs a lot. So I did just want to give you a little bit of advice around that, if that is something that you are struggling with. So moving on, like I said, and I've touched on it a little bit of like the narrative and the story and everything around that. And I just wanted to go through that and how I dealt with that, because it is part of being blocked. And the way that my story ends with my ex, and the reason why my number was blocked was because I was accused of doing something that wasn't true. I had a message, I replied, and then I had a message back, and then I was blocked. And the last message, and my Patreoners will know this, the last message that I was sent from my ex ever was a threat. And it was a threatening message to go to the police. So it was all around a message that was sent that had nothing to do with me. And I tried to explain that I had over 300,000 followers across multiple platforms, and that I do try and be nice, and that I do try and say that I don't condone bullying. If you've listened to my episode, I think I came on, it may have been on my Patreon actually, that I said, no, it must have been on the main account. I said I don't condone online bullying. The message wasn't bad. Anyway, I then received a threatening message off my ex, basically, and then was blocked. So in that respect, it was a case of, I don't think, you know, my ex probably would say, oh, I didn't need a reply or whatever. He then gets to spin the narrative. So in his head, he has a narrative of what had happened, how it happened, why it happened, who was responsible. He didn't want to hear anything else other than that, because there is also a saying that they will make you a villain in their story. And I feel like that has very much happened for me, but it happened to me in 2014. It happened to me in 2024 when I was very much in a very more stronger sort of mind space. And the fact that he blocked me just went over my head. And I was like, do you know what? I would much rather be in my position, know my truth, know my worth, know that I have like owned everything that I have ever done wrong. I know that I have a kind heart. I know that I have a big heart, than be in a position where I've had to block somebody because I don't like the narrative, or I can manipulate the narrative. I would much rather be in my position than my ex's, without a shadow of a doubt. And that is how that I deal with it. But I know that people get blocked very, very early on. And so that is kind of like my story of being blocked. It was like, I worked on myself to know that being blocked was not a reflection on me. It was a reflection on how my ex wanted to deal with things. Like I said, I've put in some examples that if his profile was open on Instagram, or if he kept contacting me about my podcast or my Instagram, which he has never done, he's never really had a big issue with it, then I probably would have looked to block him for the reason of, you know, like emotional protection, not because I'm avoiding something or trying to change the narrative of what actually happened. And I think there is an element when someone leaves you, they feel so out of control, you know, like my ex said he just wanted to pack a bag and leave. I don't blame him for that. His head must have been all over the place with with the influences that he had on like the outside, his own mind not being able to talk to me about it. And so I do think there is that element of like, oh my God, I just had to do what I needed to do at the time. But I think like blocking somebody is a conscious effort. It's because you have it. And in my story, it's because he had an issue with something. He couldn't change the narrative of what happened during our breakup. He couldn't, you know, go back and reverse how he treated me or my family. So now he gets to narrate his own story by saying, I've had to block her because of X, Y, and Z, and didn't really give me a chance to say, I can look into it, or like I could probably find out who sent that message, because I found out who sent my podcast review, which was somebody on his side. So, you know, there was a lot of things that I could have come back to him and said, I apologized on behalf of my podcast, Instagram, TikTok community, and he didn't want to hear it. So like, if that's something similar that you can think of where you've not been given the opportunity to explain yourself and you've just been blocked, that's because then they can literally tell whatever story they want to anybody else, and they can say, look, this happened, so I've had to block her. And honestly, like I said, that has no impact on me whatsoever. It just goes over my head, and I just think, that's fine. I've faced everything I want to face. You have all of the stuff that you need to face, like, yet to come. But like I said, this could have come to you and sat on your doorstep, your breakup doorstep, quite early on. And so I want to run through some things that you can do in order to help you get through situations like this, because being blocked will have you feeling completely out of control, and you're already out of control through so much stuff during a breakup that you don't need to be out of control of this as well. Like, this will hit you quite hard. So I'm going to try and go through and quickly rattle through some things that you can do to almost make you a little bit more settled in the fact that you have been blocked, because it isn't nice. It's not nice. It's really hard. And especially when, you know, I couldn't imagine not being able to contact my ex. That is something that he was very kind of forthcoming with when we first split up. Ring me whenever, talk to me whenever, text me whenever. If he cut all contact straight away, I would have really, really struggled. So I'm going to talk about something I talk about a lot, and that is changing your reaction to reflection. And like I've just done, in that I've reflected on the energy that I want to give out. I've reflected on how I view myself. I've reflected on like my worth. Knowing you, if you start to think, oh my God, they're going to tell somebody that. Oh my God, they're going to tell somebody that. Oh my God, that's part of the story isn't true. Like, you're doubting yourself and you're not backing yourself 110%. The reason why it doesn't bother me is because I know my truth. I know I'm telling the truth. I know my part of the story. I know there was enough people around me. There was, you know, my sisters, my mum, my dad. There have been enough people around me listening to conversations, watching how I reacted, to know that my story is my truth. And if they want to spin another narrative, then that's fine, because the minute that you react, the minute you are back, you are doubting yourself. You have a point to prove, which you don't need to have. You don't need to chase clarity from them. You can create it within you. So what I mean by this is, your reaction will tell 1,000 stories. Instead of reacting and instead of being like, why have you blocked me? This is so unfair, blah, 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 blah. Journal out all the emotions that are like, you know, I'm upset that I didn't get to speak to them, or, you know, I don't understand why this, you know. If you name your emotions, it gets smaller. It has less of a control over you. If you name your anger, name your sadness, and then name the emotion that you feel like you feel sorry that they've had to block you, and that's the way that they've decided to handle their breakup. And you know, it's not pity, but you just feel like you would hope that they would have more respect, you know, for somebody that they were in a relationship with. You can journal all of this out. And I know that people will go, oh, for God's sake, she's talking about journaling again. You have no idea if you don't do it. You don't do it. If you don't do it, how do you know that it doesn't work? Like, if you actually got serious, and I'm not telling you to journal every single day, do your affirmations, but in situations like this, where you completely lose control over the situation because someone's decided to block you and you cannot do anything about that, the only thing you can do is actually look inward and be like, hey, do you know what? I don't need to react like this. This is how I feel about it. These are all the emotions. This is what's coming up for me. And without realizing, the minutes that you are taking out to journal, you are calming your nervous system down. And that is what you need to be doing. So the second thing you need to be concentrating on is detoxing your nervous system. So the minute that somebody blocks you for no reason, like you can't understand the reason, or if you're in a situation like me, messages you, bang, block. Calm your nervous system, have a cold shower, distract yourself, jump up and down. Do something, because your nervous system will go and it will rock it. And, you know, I've had it recently where something has completely hit me and I've gone, oh my God, that's so annoying. And I've gone, no, put your phone down, ground yourself, splash your face with cold water. Do something that calms your body. This is so important. You need time to remember your truth, to process the truth. Yes, they've blocked you, but that is zero reflection on you, zero reflection on the story. You know their narrative has been tweaked, you know, twisted. It's got spin round. It's got little things that they've, you know, made up in their mind. You know that. When your nervous system is spiked, you don't. You need to bring yourself back down. Reacting to them blocking you will only make you more stressed. It will make your nervous system shot to pieces again. And we work extremely hard within these podcast episodes to calm our nervous systems. And that is because it is so, so important. Because not reacting is a reaction. And I know this is really hard, but emotional no response is better than, I don't know, but like messaging your best friend and saying like, message him now. Can you forward this to him? Can you find out his email address? Can you message him on PayPal? You know, like doing all of that. No reaction is a big reaction. I've not reacted since I was blocked. I've not reacted. I've had no correspondence with him since. I've had nothing. I've not emailed him. Like I said, I'm not blocked on Facebook. We have each other on Facebook. Well, we don't have each other, but you know, we're not blocked on Facebook. I could have very easily reached out to him and said, this is the message that I sent you before you so rudely blocked me. But I didn't, because I was like, do you know what? If that's what you want to believe, that's what you want to believe. When somebody has something in their mind that they want to believe, there is just no going back, especially when it's like going to work in their favor. They'll be like, no, this is what happened. This is what I can tell everybody now. You know, she might be saying this, but I can tell everybody that. And, you know, I had to block her. And now the story all matches and the story all links up and it all makes sense. And do you know what the best reaction to that is? No reaction. Emotional non-response. You know, you can feel the emotion, you can journal it out. The non-response part is the part that you give to them. Power is in silence. One of the best things that someone ever said to me. There is so much power in silence. And when you can be silent after hit, after hit, after hit, after hit, it got to a point where I was just not reacting to anything because there was no point. It wasn't going to change the outcome. He wasn't going to miraculously turn around and be like, hey, guess what? I want to erase everything. Too much had been done. There was so much water under the bridge, like that, you know, I'm in a strong position, and I don't think I would ever have said this early days, but I'm in a strong position that too much had been done. And then when people say, are you worried about your ex coming back? I'm like, no. One, because I don't think he ever would, because too much has been done. For no other reason. Like, I don't think, you know, because he's happier in a relationship or anything like that. Too much has been done. So for me, when people say, would your ex come back? Putting the onus on like, oh yeah, because, you know, he wasn't happy in his relationship, puts it on him. What about if I say there's too much has been done? Too much water has gone under the bridge. Too much disrespect happened. No, he would never come back, you know? And so like, you have to, and I hope that listening to this, you're thinking, hey, do you know what? I do that. Like, why do I not start thinking like that? And it's all about strengthening your mindset. Hence the reason why I'm so big on mindset. And lastly, like, you can create your own safe space, which I think the more I think about what I've done in my personal life in terms of, you know, cutting my personal life out of my Instagram and only having a small amount of photos on my personal Instagram, you know, unfollowing people that are mutual friends that could potentially crop up on my Instagram. You know, you don't have to track what they're doing. The more you track them, the more you burn your hand. And you need to protect your life now like it is sacred. And this is something that I'm going to start talking about more and more in the new year, in the fact that, like, I had a message off someone the other day. This is what I mean about like people like negatively messaging me that I don't talk about, and I laugh about it because I do find it quite funny. Someone messaging me saying like, how do you post on Instagram and then claim you don't post about your life on Instagram? And I'm like, because my content is stemmed around kind of like my life like 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And so I don't post about my personal life. If you have been here for a while and you are one of my OG Instagram followers, which I know I actually have OG Instagram followers that still listen to my podcast now, and I am so grateful for you guys still being here. But if you followed me a year and a half ago, you would know that I would be on my Instagram stories every morning. Hi guys, this is what I'm up to today. This is what I'm doing. Nipping to the shops and I've got to go do this, go do that, go do this, go do that. This is what I'm doing today, and like the next day, hi guys, this is what I'm doing today. This is what I've been up to at the weekend, sharing photos of my weekend, sharing photos of my holidays and stuff. And yes, I still do that, but not like I used to. You would not know if I was out the country or in the country. You would not know whether this was a pre-record or if it wasn't a pre-record. I protect my life now like it is sacred. And I think I was kind of pushed towards that because my ex's life was so accessible on Instagram, because his girlfriend shared a lot of stuff and a lot of things were coming back to me. And I thought, Christ, like, I don't want my ex knowing what I'm doing. So how do I stop that? And I've got a platform now and I've got lots of followers, and, you know, how do I stop the information getting back to him? How do I stop the information getting back to anybody in his life that's going to go, have you seen what Lou's doing? Because that was once upon a time, that was a thing. And I had to slowly implement like how I'm going to post. Now I've started to view my life as the most special, sacred thing that I have. My private life is so important to me. And, you know, I share on my Instagram story occasionally what I've been doing. Sometimes I share pictures from like months back and people are like, where are you? And what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, that was months ago. But like, you know, I've spent time out of the UK this year and no one would be able to say where I've been. If you look at either of my Instagram accounts, you don't know where I've been, you don't know who I've been with. And that's not because I'm trying to be mysterious. That is because people lost access to my life when they decided that they were going to leave my life. And that is not a problem that I should really be concerned with. If someone doesn't want to stay in your life, allow them to leave. And then make sure that they do not ever find out what you're doing with your life. And like I said, the life that I have now, I look around me and I look at my weekends and like my plans that I have this evening and the plans that I have on like Saturday and Sunday and in my birthday next weekend and what I'm doing for my birthday. And I think only the people that are around me need to know that I'm okay. And they do. They don't have to check my socials to make sure that, you know, I'm okay if I'm seeing somebody. And that's why I always stress that, like, I would love to be able to one day be a creator that comes on and says, you know, I went through a really horrendous time in 2022. I manifested a man in 2026, 2027, and this is the outcome. I still don't know how I'm going to feel about that, but I know that when I have had people in my life, I have kept them completely private and off my Instagram, and it's just not me anymore. I was that girl that posted my entire life on Instagram and was so proud of my life, was so proud of my boyfriend, was so proud of everything that we achieved. And when I had that all ripped away from me, I will never forget the people that were around me on New Year's Eve, where we literally all had a glass of Prosecco. I think I actually had the bottle in my hand, and we sat at my best friend's house. I had everybody that I'd met that year around me, and I remember one of my friends, he was behind me and he was hugging me, and I was like, it's time to delete all the photos off of Instagram. And I didn't want to delete Instagram and get a new Instagram because I didn't want it to be that like drama filled. But I remember saying to my best friend, I don't want to do this on my own. And he was like, let's just cleanse on New Year's Eve then with everybody around you. And I was like, yeah, let's do that then. So yeah, he was there. And I remember my other friend, she was sat next to me and she was like, let's do this. And so we just went through them all, and I didn't delete them. I just archived them. And I walked home because I was only up the road from my friend's house. I walked home, bottle of Prosecco in my hand, with one of the guys who doesn't live around here anymore. He used to work at my friend's bar. I walked home, bottle of Prosecco in my hand with him, and we were singing. And I got home and I thought, never, ever, ever, ever again in my life am I going to sit and delete 14 years of my life off of my social media accounts. I'm never doing it ever again. And that kind of has now created the reason why I won't share any of my private life on my Instagram. And it took me a long time to kind of learn how to not do it. But you have to protect your space like it is sacred, because you have worked so hard to get here. And that's what I tell myself every single day. You have worked so hard to get here, getting back on your feet emotionally, financially, you know, physically, like actually looking after yourself. You have worked so hard to get here. Why would you allow somebody blocking you, allow somebody, you know, creating a story that isn't true? You know, why would you allow somebody to then come in and ruin your peace completely? You don't, and you don't have to. So I hope I've given you a lot to think about. Sorry for the jittery videos. The cutting, the sound probably will be different. My computer has crashed 4 times. My phone died. My phone rang. My phone died. I had a 45-minute conversation with somebody halfway through. I had some lunch, and now is now. So I do apologise. I think the light has probably changed because it's getting darker, because the day's going on. It's been chaos, but we have got there in the end. I hope this episode really helps. If you want more from me, please come and join me on my Patreon. There is more next week being released about the single winter series that's all being recorded this weekend, which is very exciting. So that's all being done this weekend. And so it's hopefully, fingers crossed, going to be released next week. So if you want to come and get involved in that, please sign up to my Patreon now, because you will get it at the price that it is now. My tiers are going up eventually. They're going to be a little bit more expensive because a little bit more content is going to be put on there. But if you join now, you will get it for £5 a month, plus the 100+ episodes that are already on there. You will get access to that. If you are struggling with no contact, then my no contact guide is available. If you follow the link in my bio, you will be able to find it from there. If you don't do any of that, please just join me in my next hour-long episode next Friday. Look after yourself, guys. Bye.